Carl Calimeri, 12548.
Child. And talk a little bit about your mom and dad and maybe where you lived.
Well, we lived on Shaver Street, one of those big hills off of Maple Street on the south side of town. Actually, my father died when I was 10 years old, and my mother and my brother and I lived with her father, my grandfather, on Shaver Street. And so really, for me, between sports and the boys club and St. James School, that was my life, all within 5 blocks of each other. And so it was just a natural thing. Everybody in the neighborhood, in those days, you had to try out to be on the Little League teams. They give you a tag with a number and have the outfielders shagging flies and everything, and you waited at home for that call, hopefully before 10 o'clock at night, that you were in or you were out. And then Midget League football was the same in that was sort of the next rite of passage, the next thing you do after, hell, we used to play football between, the boys club was here, and Jamestown Community College was here, and there was a little pathway in between, and we'd play tackle football between the two areas, and or we'd play wiffle ball football and bounce it off the sides of the building. So I mean, that was it, other than the triangle in front of Minxie's store on Allen Street, where the diner is now, and we'd play out there, whatever. So I mean, that was it. That was my life, the house to the boys club to school to the ball fields. And my mother worked, and I got up at 4:30 in the morning. I peddled papers for the Jamestown Sun, and then would go back and go to sleep and then go to school. But that was basically it. And then when I got older, I didn't think big enough. I didn't go into junior high football. I played basketball, and I went on to play it for JV at the high school. And then we were so large, we had what we called a JV-B team, because the size of our junior class, and we played against that team. They had their Castler and Woodfield and all, Bemis Point and Randolph, and we had our own league that we played in there. And that was it. And then I played basketball at JCC under George Batitis, and I played baseball through Little League, and Babe Ruth, Bob Bender was the coach. He was an expert with a fungo bat. He'd just give me my glove and say, "Start running, Calimeri," and I'd start running, and he'd hit fly balls. And so I mean, that was it. I was very glad to have sports in my life, because that was it. And then I graduated from high school. I went on to JCC for 1 year. I played baseball and basketball there. Then I went to Brockport, but because I transferred after 1 year, I wasn't eligible to play. But then I played, they asked me after JCC if I wanted to play county league baseball, so I did in the Grape Belt League. And that all ended when I got beaned by the pitcher. Our helmets only came about that far. I swear he quick pitched me. He threw the second about 3 times, and then he turned around. I had just enough time to go like this. The ball hit. I felt right on the plate. Tony Franchina spit a piece of ice out of his mouth and put it on my face. And then his father took me to the emergency room, so I had to have surgery. So in a way, I played softball, but that ended my baseball career. The rest was church league and what was the bar league there for softball with Adam Zach and all those guys. I played that for a while, and that's about it.
Going back to the formative years, where did you go to elementary school?
Went to St. James.
St. James, okay.
From kindergarten through 7th grade, and then I went to Jefferson for 8th and 9th, because it was middle school then, and then of course to the high school.
And I'll just, before I get to Danny here, a little bit about...
well, I played football for St. James, too, under Tony Miliato.
Well, I was just going to ask about Tony. At the time, the Midget League football was sponsored by, I think, JC's.
Right.
And the age groups were from when to when? for midget?
Well, let's see, I think I thought it was 10, 11, and 12, because I didn't go the first year. I played when I was 11 and 12.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was any lower than 10.
Okay.
And in fact, when I played for St. James, we used to play the Turkey Bowl against Southside on Thanksgiving. And on one day there was so much snow, they made us all run up and down the field just to pack it down. So I played one year St. James again, then the next year I played Southside against St. James.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I think I was in there like 4th grade. I was the last one in. I had a size 13 shoe. It was like about this big. And we were playing against Lincoln Junior High and just getting mauled.
Where were the games played?
South the midget.
Yeah.
We played down at the stadium.
Stadium?
They adjusted it several times trying to avoid the infield, once we went this way, but no, so we played in the mud and the blood and the beer. We never got a totally dirt-free field.
Okay. Did you practice at Allen Park?
Yeah, we would go up there sometimes over at Jefferson, but I think most of them were up at Allen Park.
Okay. And just again, by way of background, the head coach at the time for Southside Blue Devils?
That was Arnie Everett and Les James.
And Arnie Everett, what was his background? Do you recall?
No, I don't know if they were both just, factory working guys or whatever they were. They were just normal guys, but they were right in it from the beginning. I think they were the first Southside coaches right in '57 when it all started.
Yeah. So Dan, again, a little bit of background, mom, dad, interest in sports?
Well, my parents never really had a major interest in sports. Unlike me, that's all I ever did when I grew up. And the first thing was Little League baseball, when I was 8 years old. And at Southside, we tried out at Jefferson, and Carl was right. You had a tag on you, and you did the tryouts, and you waited up. And I can remember my mom, she wasn't going to tell me that I made the team, which was VFW at the time. She didn't want me to get all excited and wouldn't sleep. But she did anyhow. She told me that was a great night. And because of my birthday, Carl and I were born the same year, but he was born in January. I was born in September. So as far as school goes, I was always one of the younger people in my class. So I had 5 years of Little League. I played 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we were over at the Willard Street Park. Willard Street Park. And so we played between Willard Street and Jefferson. There was a whole bunch of us that went down and played Lazy Man and everything else we could figure out at Jeff. But a lot of the early start was over on the Willard Street field. From Little League, the next transition during the last couple of years of that was just what are you going to do in the fall, and everybody was playing football, and it was probably maybe the first or second year that everybody was trying out for the Blue Devils. So just automatically went on down and practiced at Allen Park. Played our games at College Stadium, like Carl said. So that was it. As far as midget football goes, again, I did not play. I played football and baseball before junior high school, and then basketball during junior high. And I didn't play high school football, junior high or high school football. But as I centered pretty much around baseball and basketball. I was fortunate enough to play 3 years of varsity baseball and made the sophomore, the JV team, our sophomore year in basketball, and then 2 years of varsity, and played for Dutch Leonard. And it was Joe Tardy was our JV coach.
Okay.
Tom Prechtel, I think, might have been.
He was our coach for the B team, for the basketball.
Varsity, yeah, the B team. And that was it. when I was, you say about family and family background. Unfortunately, my parents were killed in 1965 in an automobile accident, and so they never were able to follow me the rest of my athletic career. But fortunately, I had aunts and uncles and all that kind of kept track of me, and my grandmother. I spent my last 2 years in high school with my grandmother, and again had a real lot of fun, great time playing basketball and baseball. And when I graduated from high school, I attended Rockport State University, SUNY Rockport. There, my freshman year, I played the basketball and baseball, and then my junior year, I switched over to lacrosse. Played 3 years of varsity lacrosse at Rockport, and also football. So football, basketball, baseball, and lacrosse, and that's where I finished up my career as far as playing, and then of course came back here to town. And again, what are you going to do in the spring? Well, we'll play softball. I met at the high school. There's a bunch of teachers that have been there, Vera Lindquist and so on. Got pretty good friends with those guys, and you just pick up and get onto a softball team with Bob Winterburn and Kenny Martin, the legends of softball around here. I was fortunate enough to be able to play with them. And then that basketball, same way, just town basketball. Played for the medicine shop with the same people, that Bobby and Sarah and Gramps Winterburn. Once a couple years, we picked up Rocky Morgan, and that was a treat.
I played with Pizza Hut when Ron Fredris was in charge.
Oh my goodness. Anyhow, that was my kind of athletic career until I got graduated, and then just started teaching and coaching.
And you both became teachers of renown. And for those on the camera, if you want to know more about Dan Massey, there was an interview about his fast pitch days on YouTube. So we'll do that. So I'm going to back up now and have you both talk a little bit about, we get you ultimately now to the Southside Blue Devils, and you both make the team. And the coach is Les James and Arnie Everett. Head coach is Les James, as I recall, and Arnie was. Did they split up their duties? I mean, did one have offense, one have defense?
Well, I'm not sure, but somewhere Bob Benson was in there somewhere, whether he was like just my last year or whatever. So I don't remember if they had Les being the head coach and one doing offense or defense, but I think they did, because in those days we we platooned full teams, so they probably did. But
yeah, I think Les had more to do with the offense.
yeah,
I can remember in play calling and things like that.
Yeah.
But there wasn't an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And just I'll interject one other thing before we go on. You say years later they kind of divided the teams into the heavyweights and lightweights. As I recall, there wasn't any split teams. It was just one team with one weight class, and whether you were light or heavy, everybody played on the same level.
Now, as I recall, there was a weight limit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what that was?
like I said, it's got to be somewhere around 120 to 125. I don't think you see anybody over 120 on our roster there.
Yeah, and again, I'm just going from mine. I came a couple years later. There was an initial weigh-in at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Everybody weighed in 125 or less, and I think there was, to be a lineman, you could be 125. To be a back, you'd be 115, something like that. Does that sound about?
That's about right.
Sounds about right. My grandson, who lives, he plays west side, and that's about what they do. If you go over 120, you're required to play on the line, and to be in the backfield, you have to be less. And I don't remember if there was any upper weight limit that disqualified you.
What year did you, are we talking about here? Carl, got involved in midgets was 59?
Well, let's see, we went down there, what was the date?
61 is when you went to Florida. So
All right,
backing up.
so I played the 2 years, so I played the 61 and then the 60 season in.
Okay, same for you, Dan?
I think so. I don't think I played 3 years. I think, when did it start in Jamestown?
57.
Yeah, there was a year or two, and then, I'll say us little guys found out about it.
Yeah.
But I think it was on for a year or two, and then I'm pretty sure it was 2 years that played same years that Carl played.
So we're going to talk shortly about really what happened in November of 1961. However, before that was 1960, and were you undefeated that year?
Yeah, I believe Southside was undefeated after the first 2 years, 57 and 58. I think we were undefeated the rest of the time. They got the record down there. Yeah, well, 2 of them, like we said, were during the flu season. I remember reading an article that the parents were ticked off enough that the kids were throwing up on the bench. The mothers came down and dragged the kids away, and so we forfeited. I wasn't on it at that time, but like I said, those 2 mix-ups in the first 2, I think, were the only one those 2 guys lost.
So,
Yeah, the urban
They were
legend
probably
had it
like
for
forfeits or something.
4, 5, 6 years somewhere.
Yeah.
it's a remarkable record that both of them had. Les James, just for the record, Les James had played way back when as a good baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
He played on the first professional Jamestown team at the Jamestown in Cell Rock. We need to go see Les James. So, and he lived on Foot Avenue Extension, in a house up on a kind of a hill, as I recall.
Yeah, his daughter Marla was like a year ahead of us, I think.
Oh, is that right? And his wife just passed away recently,
Is that
Arnie.
right? Oh my goodness.
Anyways, we digress. So 60, your guys are undefeated. And then, because I'm trying to figure out how Les was able to get invited to go to Florida, or how he finessed. Do you have any background on that?
Well, we were undefeated again in 61, so that's at least there is 2 undefeated years, if not longer. We never knew. I mean, we just always suspected some connection with somebody up here. People go to Florida for the winter, maybe. But the JCs of both cities got involved, but there had to have been some parental or grandparent connection of. I always envisioned a couple of grandfathers sitting at the coffee shop bragging about their grandsons' football teams, but I have no actual knowledge of what actually got it going. But the Shriners and then the JCs of both communities got involved.
Now, how did they convey that to your families? Did they say, hey, guess what, congratulations, we're going to Florida and we got to raise money?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they did that. Of course, we were 12 years old.
You weren't
at
out
the
selling
time.
donuts?
No,
or?
we did. We sold anything and everything that was possible. I can
Yeah.
just telling Randy about. I remember these little plastic raincoats.
Oh.
It's like a piece of cellophane that you take and put over a bowl in your refrigerator. But we went door to door and we mowed lawns. One time there was each kid had their little account kind of a thing, and I remember going over and mowing the lawn with hand mower on Willard Street, the field, and now mowed Les James' lawn and contributed money to a particular account. But we sold greeting cards. We sold.
Took us around selling candy bars door to door. So that was basically it. We have this opportunity, which we just jumped at, but the issue was then we got to raise enough money. And if there was so much, fine, and if not, you'd have to be willing if you would contribute whatever the rest was. We never had much, but my mother and brother went on the bus with us, so I suspect we got it down to where it wasn't that expensive, or there's no way they would have been able to come unless we had just covered it and they let parents come free when there were empty bus seats.
So you go undefeated, and you and the season probably ended in October, and then you really have originally scheduled to have a few games down in Florida.
At least one more
Yeah.
in what they called Old Galley. They even had a name for it in there, some kind of bowl game
Right.
down there. And as I remember it, everything started to get squirrely when we must have exchanged team pitchers. And that's when it all started to go, shall I say, south. I believe everybody was done as far as playing. And then, like it says in there, with calls and text messages between the JCs of both communities and the Shriners. And so first, they made, I guess it turned out to be a politically unpopular decision to try to not see the whole thing fall apart. With the money raised, they were going to give David a new bicycle.
This is David Howie.
David Howie, and he would stay home. And so that seemed to be the solution until one of the players, Jamie Spitali, made an announcement that if David didn't go, he wouldn't go. At that time, his father, Ben, was on the city council. So then I would, thinking for us, we just watched, but I think poor Les and Arnie, now they're involved in kind of a political situation that my guess that just hard-working guys, that might have been kind of tough for them to sort their way through all that. That's when I think that the JCs got involved and negotiated enough, and Daytona said he's welcome to come, we look forward to him, and he can play. But Old Galley, they didn't want anything to do with it.
What did you guys as players, because you're in a kind of a limbo. Are you going? Aren't you going? You got a teammate that may not be going, and did it filter down to you two guys as well? Do you remember conversations?
Maybe a little bit, as far as we knew what was going on, but as far as us making any decisions, we had. Everybody was pretty naive at the time.
Yeah. The hardest part had to be for David, because even with their negotiations, it looked like we were going to go one way or another. You know, but whether they made the bad move about the bike or whatever, and then it got settled. I think the biggest thing for me, and especially that's what's drawn me to this more and more, is my background as a history teacher. I became more and more aware, so forgive me, but Brown versus Board of Education, 1954, talked about the integration of schools. Through my studies of history, the response of most southern states was to just ignore that whole thing. Remember, Eisenhower had to send troops to Little Rock. So I believe in 1961, Florida, which many people forget is a southern state, pretty much was just ignoring the whole thing. So I think that's what made it interesting to me. I think we broke some ground. That might have been one of the first ever football games in Florida or much of the South where even one black individual got in the field with white players. I have no evidence to back that up, but just knowing the timing, it certainly seems like it. And of course, the controversy that it started showed that at the very least it wasn't a common thing down there.
I'm just going to read your delivered Jamestown Sun here. The importance of this trip to the young players have been emphasized by George Kakamis, who you probably know more later, commissioner of the league. He noted that the members of the team have worked diligently to raise funds for the journey, which you just described. He reported that the parents of young Howie have agreed their son should not make the trip, but felt other members should go as planned. Coach Les James has stated that Howie was still eligible to go, but could not be allowed to place. Sponsors of the bowl game had declared. James said the sponsors also pointed out that the trip leaders might run into difficulty getting the boy into pregame and postgame dinners and other affairs connected with said tournament. James said that the boy's father had told him he was familiar with the racial policies in Florida and would not permit Howie to go unless there was assurances of equal treatment all along the line. Not separate, but equal. Equal. This is dead on of Brown versus Board. the club has just completed its third unbeaten season with an overall record of 29 wins, 3 losses, and a single tie, and has won 4 league titles since the team was organized in the beginning. You know, that's just how good.
I often wondered what happened after we left, what the next season was like. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in regards to that, again, a history teacher and me, the game was one thing, the pre-game stuff, but going down there, I realized I was in a different world. We stopped in Georgia to go to a burger joint. I don't even know if McDonald's was around then. And I didn't even remember it all, but my brother reminded me. As we were standing in line, all he remembers is poor David flying backwards as the big chef threw him out of the line, and it said there's no way he was coming in there.
Really?
He could go around to the back on the back steps, and his boy would bring him a burger, and after that we hardly felt uncomfortable wherever we stayed. And the way they solved the housing thing was David stayed, we all stayed with members of the other team. And David stayed, I remember the nice family, with the black minister's family. That's who he stayed with, because obviously there was no counterpart for him. And then that night, the kid I was with and his brother, I don't know if they were driving at 13 years old or what, but we got in a truck. He says, come on, we'll go to the field, the high school game, so you can see the stadium we're going to play in. And there it was, white drinking fountain, black drinking fountain, white bathroom, black bathroom. And I mean, even at 13 years old, I realized this is not a world I'm familiar with.
You know, to me, as the Jackson Center, one of the founders, this fits unbelievably into a lesson, because there was a Brown versus Board, separate but equals, unconstitutional. Then there was Brown versus Board 2, that was the remedy. And the remedy said all of you states that have separate but equal must resolve it with all deliberate speed.
Yeah.
And that was what they took that out. Well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
And that's what you were saying. It's 61.
Yeah.
This is 61.
That was 61.
I was a little bit familiar with that because my grandmother lived in Florida growing up since the early 1950s. And we would go down there summers when my dad's shop closed. And so it was all over the South. They didn't use the word black then, it was colored. You know, drinking whites only, bathrooms, whites only, drinking fountains, restaurants. You saw maybe colored facilities. You hit pretty much south of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You know?
After the one stop, we didn't want to stop again.
It was there. And when we got there, we all housed up. We stayed with individual players. We were probably partnered up, and I can't remember who I played with.
So it's sort of like at the old Babe Ruth World Series things, where with parents, and in David's case, he would typically, the minister, the black minister, church, would be a black church minister, would take that up.
Well, here's another one for you. Even my priest told me I was an idiot. We got there on a Friday, and we went with the other team, and they served up this beautiful Southern ham.
Yeah.
So like a good Catholic, I said, I can't eat that. And I can still remember, oh, you're one of those. So they gave me fish sticks. And I realized we weren't that popular there either.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the KKK didn't like the Catholics.
No.
Nice. So talk to me a little bit about David. Who was David? What do you remember about him, and how did he handle this? Because he's the eye in the eye of the storm, whether he wanted to or not.
I don't remember a lot of real stress or tension. I mean, frankly, you know, we lived in a town where, you know, you went to school together, one high school. We just played football. As far as I was concerned, we were just friends. Like you said, if his address is there, we didn't physically live too close to each other. So outside of just playing football, I didn't see him a lot. So I don't remember anything particular other than we were just friends and played football. Now, what kind of emotional stuff you might have been going through, I either was too young to know or was never really made aware.
Never.
Yeah, we didn't, and that's typical, you know, as far as hanging out and socializing. You played sports with a particular team and the kids on that team. But I mean, Carl grew up down in the Allen Street, the Boys Club area. I grew up at the top of Camp Street. The only time we really saw or did anything together was either at school or at practice or at games.
Did David go to your school, Dan?
I don't believe so, because I started off at Fletcher and then went to Rogers for 1 year, and then they were closing the Willard Street School and building the new Bush School on top of the hill. And so the first time that opened up, I was in the 3rd grade, so we finished up 3rd through 6th there, and then down to Jefferson for 7th.
And I went to St.
Grade.
James
Yeah.
until I went to
But
Jefferson.
We played on, I've known Carl ever since he was on KFC, but we didn't go to the same schools, we didn't live in the same neighborhoods, but we've known each other for years through Little League Baseball and Southside Midget Football.
David Howie, number 32, right guard, weight 95,
Yeah, he was not a very big kid.
age 13.
It says the 110-pounder.
Wait, I digress for one quick second. I came a couple years later, and I look at Tom Keppick, who was on the team then, and left guard, 118, weight 118, age 11. So when he's age 13, Tom lost a whole bunch of weight very quickly so he could hit the scales at 125 when he was age 13, my year. I remember that specifically, and he probably played it around 150.
Well, it's a stressful time for my grandson. Who wants to be a left guard in Midget League? He wants to catch the ball, so God, he just stepped on the scales trying to beat that 120-pound thing. He could never do it. But now he steps up to modified, so whether he has the skills or not, at least his weight lets him go. So, yeah, that weight thing was a big deal.
It's just your headlines that you have, Carl, are really fascinating. Florida color band keeps Negro grid star in Jamestown. David Howie to remain home as team departs. The next one says, Howie to go to Florida. Bowl game controversy over. Team off Wednesday. Then the next headline, midget players and coaches leave tonight for Florida bowl game. And there's a picture, our buddy Tom Keppick, Bucky
Right.
Brown, and Sam
Capano, I see.
Yeah, Capano, Arnie, Everett, and Les James. Then Post-Journal, bowl-bound Jamestown Blue Devils to take gridiron record to Florida, play Daytona Beach in Shrine game. So I think for again the record, it was originally scheduled to have 2 games.
Right.
Then kind of what happened.
Well, like I said, whether it was exchange of team pitchers, and I suppose at first it never occurred to them that there would be any black kid playing football. I'm just, surmising that from my, teaching experience and things, and I guess that's what must have started it. And you've got so many, because a couple of those articles were from the morning paper, the Jamestown Sun, and the Post-Journal. And I thought Frank Hyde, who was a great sports writer, he had an article that kind of summed up the whole thing, the controversy and the resolution in there. And I thought he did a pretty good job. And his might have been from the Sun. But that's why you got, like you said, you had one that he didn't go, and then the Sun said that he is going. So you get some duplication there.
Yeah, there's, we'll get into just a little bit.
Frankly speaking, I think he used to call his articles.
And then the Sun had Sunlight on Sports by Ed Gleed, and if you read your file, there's a run and gun shoot between Frank and Ed regarding who did what to whom, and it was good. And there is a picture, and again we'll show this when we do the final video. Howie rolls south with Blue Devils, and there's a picture of Pete Cunningham, his stepson David Howie, and there's a picture of David here with the team. on its way to go south. And then you talking about the fact that on your way south, other than your stop in Georgia, which was meaningful, when you got to Florida itself, talk about where did you practice, what did you do, how did you prep for the game? Was there much time, or?
I don't think we had too much time before the game.
I don't think we practiced it. I remember when we got there, we kind of paired up and I can't remember if we stayed in the motel before or after.
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 We went with the parents first.
But I can remember going out on the beach with our swim trunks and bare feet and just running plays in the sand.
Yeah, well, they made it nice for us. We got to hit the beach. We got to ride in the school bus around the base of Daytona Beach track because it was so banked, less then, but still. We went to an alligator farm, and they made a good experience for us. I remember the adults all disappeared, and there was word they were on their way to Miami for a little while, and they came back. And then on the way home, because we had extra time because of the canceled game, we stopped in D.C. and went through several of the museums, and I still have little packets of postcards from that experience. And so they made it a pretty good trip for us all the way around.
Carl, how did the spectators at the game, the Florida spectators at the game, how did they treat the Southside Blue Devils?
They treated us very, very nice. I can't remember any controversy of them,
There was
no
visible reaction to David playing?
I don't recall that.
I don't know what
was looking for it.
if he ran into anything off the field, but as far as I remember, it was just a hard-fought, low-scoring football game. I don't remember any dirty names being hollered at him or anything, and certainly the parents all accepted us, and he had a comfortable place to stay. So from our perspective, only he would know if there was more to it than that.
Did David go to the high school with you guys? Did you have a relationship with him beyond Southside football?
I did not.
I remember going to school with him, and his sister, it must have been his sister Loretta Howie, graduated with me. I was good friends with her, and just sort of casually, just knew David from our awareness, but nothing, any unusually close or anything like that.
Talk about the game itself. You played, and it was a low-scoring game, right?
Yeah, we didn't score the extra point, and they did.
7-6.
Yeah. I remember the first time I ran the ball, man, they killed me. I said, Jesus. I said, these guys hit hard. So when I got on defense, I said, watch this. I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it, but I smashed the first ball carrier I could find, and he fumbled. But that's, I remember, it was harder hitting than other games I had been in.
They put helmets on you.
So they were a very good team.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
There were no slouch.
There was no, the type of tackling that they used to do was you lead with your snoop, and they put helmets on you. Today they'll be probably targeting, but that's the way. That's the way tackling was taught. Get your head in front, get your nose on the ball.
Well, and we had those silly face masks that were a piece of plastic. It went like over your nose, like what they wear if you got a broken nose. So it wasn't a whole lot of protection. If it was, all I had to do was push it one more inch and it's in your face.
Our equipment was pretty rugged, pretty primitive.
Yeah.
And I remember that before we left, we actually got some better equipment because we borrowed the Southwestern Sailors equipment, helmets and a few things. I might have been their jerseys or whatever.
Could be. I don't remember all that, but yeah.
I know I had a different with a regular plastic.
Yeah, we had something better then.
Yeah, Carl's right. There was just a plastic piece that snapped here with a hole in it. That was your face mask, and some pretty primitive equipment. That's for sure.
Probably was the big deal at that time that you had a face mask at all.
I can remember being down there and looking at some of their equipment. The hotel that we stayed at after the game, for a couple of days. They had this van, and one of the coaches or persons high in their coaching staff either owned the hotel or worked at the hotel. They had a van with Daytona Beach Bulldogs printed all over it, and it was an equipment van because there was a whole lot of equipment hung up on the inside of the van. Their shoulder pads were all stacked in there.
Yeah, and I forgot that. He did let us stay there for a night or two again because we had all this extra time without the other game.
Did he let David stay at that hotel?
I'm guessing probably not. David probably stayed
Stayed overnight.
As I told you
I
on the
guess.
phone a week or so ago, he probably connected with a minister or some sort of.
That's what I know. That's what he stayed with. Yeah.
About the game, I believe the game that we went to prior to the high school game, we were staying with individual players, and the fellow that I stayed with, I can't remember, it was Hogan or something like. His dad was a coach at this high school game that we went to. I can remember going to the high school game. I think it was Seabreeze High School, maybe. That seems to ring a bell. And they treated us very, very nicely while we were guests at their home. And then we went, after the game, we went to some tennis club, golf club, some place like Moonbrook, a country club.
Not me. I went back to fish sticks.
And no, that was the whole team went for a banquet.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, we went.
No tartar sauce, right, Carl?
The whole team went. And,
Oh, yeah, you're right.
we
After
went-
that,
we went-
okay, as
we
a
went
team.
to as a team, we went
Yeah.
to this fancy big place, and they had a dais and everything. And each one of us were, when I was looking for it before I came down here, we were awarded this little gold football, and it says Shrine Bowl on it. I was trying to find it, and I'll look. I know I still have it.
Yeah, so I suspect the Shriners must have thrown some money into the pot for all of this too.
Sure.
Just again for the camera, Bulldogs journey 95 yards to 7-6 victory. This is Post-Journal. The Daytona Beach Bulldogs, full of the old petrol after halftime pit stop, this is great how they write, came on like a fleet of Mack trucks in the final two periods yesterday and jarred Jamestown, New York 7-6 in the Shrine Bowl Midget League grid contest at Memorial Stadium. We scored in the second quarter, and it was running by James Ferraro, Carl Calimeri, and Sam Capano took turns punching the ball to the Bulldogs' 2-yard line where Ferraro broke over for the 6 points. And there was confusion, and the PAT failed. And then, really, it was the fourth quarter. Guys held them scoreless until the fourth quarter when they went 85 yards, an 85-yard drive, and a couple of fourth downs they made. So that's how they finally won when they got the point after, as you talked about. And I see they've got a trophy, though, from the Shriners, and there's a picture right here.
Yep.
And there's a handsome-looking blonde-haired guy right there. So, yeah, Wayne Swanson holds the Shrine Bowl trophy, presented the Southside Blue Devils after the game Sunday. Dan Massey and Coach Arnie Everett look on from the doorway of the bus. So there we go. It's quite the trophy. Somebody's got a big, huge trophy.
Got to be somewhere, yeah.
That's it.
Did you guys have much of a passing game back then, or was it all running the ball? I mean, you played end, Dan. Did you ever get a ball thrown your way?
Yeah, once in a while. You said if you really needed the pen, but it was just a running game most of the time. One to the left, two to the right. Those type, real sophisticated plays.
Well, they started me off in the early practices. They wanted me to play quarterback, and they discovered I couldn't throw the damn thing at all. So I suppose Bucky, who was better than me, but I don't know how much better we were because we did tend to be a running team.
So the game is over. You're on your way back. But I saw on the itinerary.
The only place I remember staying was overnight in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's the only one I remember.
We went to the monuments. Went to
Don't
Lincoln
know if
Memorial. We climbed. We walked. Did the walk to the top of the Washington Monument.
Oh, really? Wow.
For that. I can't tell you where we stayed. It was a motel, I think.
Yeah.
I can remember the moms kind of gathering all of us together, and they went out and bought loaves of bread and lunch meat and things, and we were having lunches and kind of sandwiches in the hotel rooms they were making. And
We were probably running out of money by
we
then.
didn't have a whole lot of money as far as go out to eat or anything. I don't remember stopping at any restaurants.
So you guys missed school to go down to do this, is that correct?
Yep.
You missed some school.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact date was when we left or when, I'm sure it's in there, but, well, we barreled all the way through on the bus. We never stayed overnight anywhere. But, so that had to be a 2-day trip pretty much anyway, down and 2 days back, because even if you make it, and then, like I said, then they didn't like it that we didn't report to school. After Hyde says we arrived late, the mother said we could stay home, but the school didn't think we should stay home.
Yeah, there was no Interstate 95.
Yeah.
No, it's a long haul. Reading, you come back home, and was there much conversation? I mean, you'd come back home, David, he already played in the game, just like normal. And do you remember any conversation when you get back, other than welcome back and glad you had it? As players, do you remember much?
No, I don't remember much. I think it was like anything else. That was the end of the season, and you turned in your equipment, and basketball was starting, and we all went our own way as far as sports went.
Yeah.
I don't remember much of anything after that.
Did you play the next year? Those would have been 62.
No,
Or did you age out?
Age out.
Yeah, me too.
Did you age out? I'm going to just read again for the camera. This is Frankly Speaking. Frank Hyde, the sound and fury has subsided. I think this was written probably just before you took off. And a little Negro boy will be allowed to play a football game. Supreme Court rulings to the contrary, Brown versus Board and Brown versus Board 2. The long-range sparring that resulted in putting David Howie in Blue Devils lineup at Daytona Beach Sunday, but forced cancellation of a game in Allgalley?
Yeah.
Allgalley paints an unsavory picture of the great state of Florida. Think how Mr. K's propaganda machinery will gobble up and assimilate this juicy morsel.
And maybe Khrushchev heard about us, huh?
Exactly. It is regrettable that two real nice guys, coaches Les James and Arnie Everett, became innocently involved in a nasty situation. And then talks about the JC, and a whole lot of things. There was also coverage on the Jamestown Sun, Carl's paper, from Lead, that painted a little bit of a different picture, more attacking the JCs. You know, do you remember much about that? I mean, now that you've read some of this, that's sort of a sidebar, really, articles between Frank and the Jamestown Sun about kind of where the ball got dropped.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we didn't know enough about the JCs. I felt that, especially with the bicycle incident, Les and Arnie took more of the brunt than they really deserved to have to take. Mm-hmm. They were just trying to make the best out of a bad situation, and now that the money had all been collected and everything was in charge, trying to keep the whole thing from falling apart.
Carl, I believe that Arnie and Les did not coach after that year. I believe the very next year, Joe Albano took over at Southside. I'm wondering if this had an effect on Arnie and Les, as you're talking about.
Sure, it was more than they ever bargained for.
Yeah, because this would have been 61, so 62. I think that's when I played. My first year, and then Joe was the coach with Pete Wilson,
Yes,
Bob
that's right.
Benson,
Bob Benson,
and
yeah.
Don Abramson.
Yeah.
Don
Abramson.
Yeah, so I mean, he kind of pulled together all those JHS. They all played together at one point.
Yeah.
And that was that team. And so you knew of Les and you knew of this, but that was this brand new Southside.
Their interest may have waned a little bit too. It just
Well, they had been at it since the beginning, right, with a fantastic record.
Well, let me just, in case I didn't mention it, is that here's the program that,
Yeah.
Carl, good job. Daytona Beach 1961 program, and it says right at the bottom, team record past 5 years, won 31, lost 2, tie 1, league champs for the last 4 years. I mean, that's what they record going into the game.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. And guys that were on the team, just again, more for the camera, Terry Gill, James Ferraro, Carl Calimeri, Sam Capano, Harry Brown, Kent Young, Paul Calanio, Dan Massey, Lance Erickson, Richard O'Neill, Wayne Swanson, William Williams, James Tusho, Bruce Atkins, Tom Kepek, Jamie Spitali, Joe Marino, David Howie, Jack, is it Wagerman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bob Johnson, John Conti, Dave Melquist, John Nelson, coaches Les James and Arnie Everett, league commissioner George Kakamis.
It's a pretty tight-knit group. I played baseball with almost all those guys, too. We all seemed to go from one to the other.
That was the South Side.
That was our life.
The 4 Little League teams kind of melted into the one.
You guys were
football
both
team.
teachers. Did you ever tell this story to your students?
Mentioning it, not necessarily to students, but whatever the opportunity came up about anybody saying Southside midget football is, 1960, 61, we went to Florida and played well, I'm going to say we thought they were the Florida State midget football champions, whether they were or not. Did you hear anything?
Sure,
No.
the answer is sure, over
It was,
time.
it's like the older we get, the faster we were.
Well, I was in a unique position being a history teacher, so yes, I told it every time when we did the segment on the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes some of the other social studies teachers would ask me to come in and explain it, and my main goal was, well, number one, I always felt kids like anecdotal, personal history. They buy that into what are 3 causes of the Civil War. So I always tried to do that, just like when I did the immigration section. I always talked about my father's problems as an Italian immigrant and the Swede Hill and the others. So I had a unique position, and yes, I made a point of telling it and to remind them even then when I was teaching in 72 and 73, this is 10 years ago. You kids were born when this was happening, so don't think that all this civil rights stuff is ancient history. And I think they responded well to just having some experience to relate to.
Just to go back to Dan's thought, here we go. The Bulldogs have won 33, lost 3, and tied 1 over the past 4 seasons. The Bulldogs won the state championship last season and are ranked among the top 10 of its kind in America.
Well,
And you battled them to 7-6.
I guess when I would mention it to my students or people that I was around, Carl's taking it from the history standpoint, being health and phys ed and coaching, that mine came from more of an athletic background as far as, we went to Florida, we played them, it was a tough football game, and back then in kicking, you didn't kick extra points or anything, you always ran or passed. But then the conversion was not 2 points, it was 1 point. But mine interest in telling the stories came from more of an athletic background.
It's a remarkable story that probably, if you hadn't done what you're doing today, it would be lost in the dustbin of history. I mean, you're now retired.
Yep.
And that's not going to be easily remembered or repeated. So I am just so thrilled you did this. And does it dawn on you? I mean, here you are, this is 63 years later. You were part of something really distinctive for Jamestown.
I think it's remarkable that league has been one continuous
Midget League, yeah.
Midget League football.
Yeah.
Continuous for 60 years.
Yeah.
What institution lasts that long? It's incredible.
But is there a legacy to this whole thing here? I mean, kind of something to have learned this? You lived through history. Is there kind of a walkaway?
Other than the fact I've hung on to the memory of it and told the story 100 times to anybody that would listen, I realized it was an experience, and I guess as my background, as I grew more and more and became more or less, not an expert, but a student of the civil rights movement, it was always one of my most favorite units to try to teach in school and add the personal experiences. So other than that, I mean, the memory's still there, and it always will be. And I've passed it along to as many people as I could.
Time that David Howie was involved in this, the South was still in segregation, and there was fear that David would be unable to be treated fairly while he was on the trip. They were wondering if they would let him eat at the restaurants where they stopped, or could he stay overnight in motels or living situations. It was a real worry to people, as he was young, and he'd really not been, he had not been experienced any of this stuff. So in order not to expose him to this, they offered to buy him a new bicycle for his part in the championship. And apparently his parents knew of the turmoil he could face in Florida, so they were all right with us. They had accepted that this would be something that they would do, and David was well liked. Everyone felt badly, about him not being able to go, but they also, worried about him being all right. And anyways, I don't know really what happened. He did go in the end, and I'm not sure of those circumstances of how that happened, but someone apparently on the city council didn't like the idea that if he couldn't go, no one should go. And this was after it was all settled. So it became more of an issue, and it became picked up by the Associated Press, which went all over the country at that point. And I know our family received a lot of hate mail and bad pictures, threats, and so forth. But that didn't really stop my dad, and I don't remember us discussing this a lot. I don't really know how much that got out in the public, but we tended to keep that really more to ourselves. And as I said, that really didn't stop my dad, because the kids were looking so forward to going on that trip. So anyways, like I said, it was decided that he would go. And so, that he was well treated from all respects, and he even did stay with one of the other team members when he was in Florida. So, apparently everything worked out well for them, but it was a time that a lot of people in Jamestown had an experience at segregation. A lot of us young people had really no idea what was going on down there. So it was a time that we learned some things that we didn't know. And I think that probably was a eye-opener for a lot of us, that, everyone wasn't treated the same. All I remember is my dad and Arnie Everett started the Southside Blue Devils. That's really as far as I really know of that. I I don't remember mentioning any, not to us kids, the charters, so I really can't answer that.
Well, I'm just curious about when your dad. I've known him. I knew him as really baseball related. Was football part of his background?
Oh, yes. He was an All-American. He's football, you name it, football, basketball, baseball, golf, bowling. He was involved in all kinds of sports. He had 3 daughters, and it was like when I wrote a book about my mom, I never felt that he wanted to trade us in. We all kind of were involved, and I'm probably the most involved in the sports, but we all took part in that. And like I said, there was 3 girls to my father plus my mom, so he was a good sport about it.
Was Les and Arnie friends prior to this formation of the football team?
Yes.
Did Arnie have a boy that played on the team?
I'm not sure about Arnie. I'm not sure about Arnie's sports with my dad, but I know Arnie did play sports. I'm not sure which ones he played on, but I know he and my dad were personal friends.
What was Arnie's background?
I don't know much about Arnie. That's really interesting. I know he had 3 daughters. And his wife was quiet, but I really don't know. Arnie, I was staying with my dad and that, but actually I don't know that much about Arnie.
Okay. May I ask the question? I mean, this happened, David Howie was 1961, and personally I became a member of the Southside Blue Devils in 62, of which we had a coach named Joe Albano. So I didn't intersperse with Les, and I, other than knowing him separately, was there a reason why he did not continue? And do you think it was at all related to this?
No, I don't think my dad let that bother him at all. I'm not sure really why. Maybe he just decided it was time to stop. I don't know. He really never mentioned anything about there was a problem with it. He just guess he had other things he wanted to do. He was a very good coach. He was a no nonsense. He's a man of little words, but he was no nonsense. And his motto and his goal was that they were in this to win, and he worked his players hard. I mean, they had to do their best. It was expected to be at each practice and, work hard, and there was no horse player fooling around with my dad. I mean, there really wasn't. They did their calisthenics, push-ups, running, and I know he picked up a lot of kids for practice because not having a ride wasn't an excuse to my father. So I think when the kids left the Blue Devils, they knew they had to put forth if they wanted something. And they worked very hard for my dad. They really did. And if they wanted something, they were going to put forth some hard work. And I believe that was, a good ending for the kids to have that, because they did work hard. They were good team players, and I give them a lot of credit.
Marla, your sister Val was a cheerleader that year, correct?
Yes.
Did she accompany the team
and
to
I did
Florida?
ask her some questions for you, because I thought, does she know anything further than I did? And she said that she apparently, when Carl was giving his thoughts about the program and going down there, he mentioned that when they stopped at a McDonald's or something, David couldn't eat inside the restaurant or something. She does not remember that happening. she said that she remembered things going very well, and they had a wonderful time, and David was allowed to stay with one of the players on the other team, which the other players did too. When they got there, the other team took in each player to stay while they were, at the championship game. So she said it was a very heartbreaking game. Everybody was crying because it was so close, and they just missed it by 1 point. And everybody had a wonderful time on the trip. So that at least was a good thing for all the kids that went. As far as the turmoil, and like I said, I don't think what we went through was really well known. I think it was kept pretty much to ourselves.
Let me ask you, I guess, knowing your mother so well, did it affect her? Did Les kind of bring it up at family dinners, or saying, hey, guess what happened today?
Well, I think it affected us, yes. But we also knew that talking about it or spreading it was not a good thing. And I think my parents did shield us from some of the, probably the threats in the papers we got. But we were old enough that they wanted us to know what was going on and what was happening. It was part of life at that point. And they wanted us to be aware of what was happening. So I do think, yes, we did know, but I do think we were somewhat shielded. And like I said, my father was such a man of little words. I don't know Arnie, if his family, I don't remember them getting this, but I think because he was, the coach, listed as a coach at that time, we probably got the most of it. And like I said, we kept it pretty quiet. I don't remember telling people about it, and it was just something we knew that we were going to have to experience for a while. I don't remember being afraid either. So apparently we, whatever we were told, we still felt fairly safe, even though today I probably would have been a lot more worried about it. But at the time we didn't. We just kept it to ourselves. It was a time that I think a lot of us had our eyes open that everybody didn't get along, and it probably was good for us to learn that we weren't always going to face good times, that there was a problem, because we didn't have that in Jamestown. We just didn't. We thought nothing of our black friends. So, it was very interesting to learn that, everybody didn't feel that way. So we learned a lesson, and I think it was good for all of us at the time to know that stuff. And we weathered the storm. And the Blue Devils were a great team. He was quite a person, I'll tell you. He loved his sports, and he put all into it. He was, like I said, no nonsense guy. It was like, hey, we're in this to win.
Well, thank you so much.